All right, welcome back to Interview At, where we teach you how to use the Amazon leadership principles to land your dream job. The interview this week is with a program manager candidate. These are the folks that are often running around with the clipboard, making sure that everybody is doing their job, sometimes getting into the weeds to make sure that the engineers are talking to the product managers and that everybody understands what the schedule needs to be and when things need to be delivered. This week's covered topic, the leadership principle, is insists on high standards. And the question that I asked is one of those that, it doesn't get asked that often in interviews. And so I'm always surprised by some of the answers I hear. We'll see how this one goes. But the question today was, what is the most significant continuous improvement project you have ever been responsible for? This is specifically important for program managers because they're often in the weeds, dealing with operational issues, making sure things are getting done on time, dealing with projects over time, things that have repeatable deliverables, right? You could even see software development as that, right? You've got your 2-week sprints if you're running an agile focused delivery mechanism. So this is one of the harder questions to answer because it really does require preparation. So a lot of people don't necessarily think about their work as continuous improvement. And so let's see how the candidate did. What is the most significant continuous improvement project that you've ever led?
Project that
Just going to jump in right here real quick. This is a pro tip. If you're going to take a minute, tell the interviewer you're going to take a minute. This is especially true in video interviews because you're not in the room and there's kind of that missing level of personality and connectedness, and it just creates weird dead space. Don't do that.
So when you say project led, does that specifically refer to like a product that was related to continuous improvement, or
It could be a set of processes that you were overseeing. It could be any number of things, right?
Yeah. So at Johnson & Johnson, working with a different sponsor, we were building a online tool for customers to go online and enter their location and find out the closest drug trials that was happening close to them, and be able to basically sign up for them. It was a global team based in Brazil, Europe, and North America. And large, close to 100 people that I was tracking their activities on. And
I'm sorry, you said
it was
100 people?
Yeah, about 100 people, 80 plus people that I was tracking their milestones and deliverables on my project plan.
Sure.
And what I was noticing was risk and issues were identified too late in the process. So so what I ended up doing was when I noticed that this is happening multiple times and it's the root cause of issue, I actually discussed with my
I'm sorry, I missed when what happened.
Risk and issues were identified too late.
Got it.
When there was already roadblocks, basically.
Okay.
So I ended up doing a training. It was a 3 trainings on, it was a 3-session training that I did for different teams. Some of them, 1 or 2 of them was virtual, 1 or 2 of them was in person, each about, I don't know, 20, 30 people. And as people were onboarding, I was doing more of that. But I basically created a program and a deck for training folks on what a risk is versus what an issue is, how to identify, provided examples, and how to report them as soon as they find out, how to document it, and kind of like the impact that it would have. The example of how to, like a good example and not a very good example. And I think that really helped. So that was that's what I would say, like a continuous improvement example that I learned to do, and I had to work on it a few different iterations, and I saw a big improvement.
Well, so as an interviewer, I haven't watched this one back since we did it, so this is over a year old. There's a lot of good setup in here, in that the candidate is laying out the problem space. If she had successfully identified the leadership principle as insist on high standards, there would have been less of a focus on enumerating kind of process related items and more of a focus on, well, what was being improved, right? So what she had said was, and the thing that she identified was that there were risks and issues were being missed. But that's kind of a nebulous topic. So when you're, especially if you're a program manager, but when you're being asked a question that you can identify as insist on high standards, you have to establish what that standard is. And sometimes those standards means actual numbers or deliverables or timings or schedules, something. But without that context, it's really hard to, even with this setup, understand what the candidate is doing and why. And so, in the back of my mind, having now listened to this again, I'm wondering if they didn't kind of misclassify and maybe they thought this was earned trust. Maybe this would be a better answer for earned trust. There's a lot of moving parts here, a lot of people involved. But if you're going to do a continuous improvement process, like, you got to talk about what you're improving, because if you don't know what you're aiming at, like when you start the process, you're just kind of spinning your wheels, and it just makes it a little bit harder to deliver as a story in an interview, to convince somebody that you are very good at delivering on a better process.
So help me understand what the catalyst to the change was.
Sorry, what is catalyst?
Catalyst. What caused? What was the event or series of events that caused you to say, this needs to be addressed, or we have a problem here that needs working on? What caused that?
Example was, for example, delays or issues in the, let's say, engineering team, that it would come up. It was reported too late. Working because there was also like vendors involved, PMs at vendors involved, and I remember a lot of the issues that we had. It was in Jira. It was identified too late, reported too late. It could have been, delays could have been avoided if it was reported earlier.
Okay.
There's still no stakes involved here, and that's the problem. And where I kind of, as an interviewer, I'm struggling because I don't understand what as an employee, as someone running a team, a process, whatever, what this person was doing and how they know that they were being successful, or how they could even point to it and say, we're being successful, right? Data matters, metrics matter. And certainly when you're talking about something with improvement, what was the starting point, what was the ending point? Like, what did that difference look like? And that just hasn't been laid out here yet.
So when you ran these trainings and kind of got all the way through it, what do you believe was the impact, or what can you demonstrate was the impact of the business?
Basically less issues, less delays, less roadblocks, and just
less is not an order of magnitude. It's not a unit of measure. It's less. Okay, but how much less? And what did that mean to the business? Numbers, data.
I think just clarity on what we're asking different teams and members in all these different roles. What do we mean by what a risk is, what an issue is? Just clarity on that. I think that helped. But in general, definitely less delays and complications.
Sure, less delays is fine, but can you put a quantified number or set of metrics on this, right? Percent of time you shipped on time, dollars lost, customer, right? Like, were there metrics in place, or was it just schedule tracking?
I guess the one thing I can say about, having not watched this in a year and feeling good about it is the fact that I'm fairly consistent in the questions that come into my mind as I watch this and I listen to it. And it's the same thing I would have focused on if I was sitting with this candidate right now. It's look, this is fairly simple stuff from a consistency point of view, where if you master these things, you will do well in an interview. This candidate has just failed to outline what the metrics are. There was great setup, great content, real opportunity to lay out a process that they improved, but ultimately without the magnitude of improvement, some unit of measure, something to kind of hang your hat on and say, this is what I set out to do, and either we perform below that or way exceeded that. It's hard to know, was this time well spent? It's hard to know if they actually solved a problem. And so I'm struggling with it as an interviewer. I'm struggling here to kind of get over the hump, and it's not, the message isn't landing. And now this is like the fourth kind of follow-on question, prodding to get at that. And this is really something you have to look for in an interview is, are you being asked these kind of prodding questions repeatedly? Because if you are, it means you're not giving the interviewer what they're looking for. And so sometimes it's time to regroup and kind of say, okay, are you asking for something specific? What am I missing here? That's a fine question. It's not great, but it's a fine question. It's not a killer. But if you kind of can catch the trap questions over and over again that you're getting asked, then you can, reorient and deliver what you're being asked for.
There was metrics in place for Jira issues that I remember I looked at myself, and I discussed it with my sponsor. I want to say there was about 20%.
Sorry, you broke up there. You started to say,
issue.
sorry, you broke up there. You started to say, I believe there's 20, and then you just cut out.
20% less issues.
Okay.
One of my favorite stories back when I was an intern at Microsoft in the mid 90s, yes, I'm that old, was a story that was going around about how a team was being gold and bonused on a testing team on how many bugs they found, and the development team was being gold and bonused on how many bugs they fixed. So, if you look at this with an objective eye, you can see where this is going. The two teams got together and just completely flooded the database with bugs that were easily fixed, and everybody got paid. So number of bugs in the database is rarely the best answer as far as a continuous improvement project. It's fine that there was an answer. She didn't sound super confident about the number, which, again, it's, if you're in an interview, you want to have command of the material and you want to be able to speak with some level of certainty, but not the best answer for something like this.
How did you measure that?
Jira reporting tickets.
Okay. And so when you think about the process you kind of went through to deliver the trainings, how did you go about getting buy-in for what you wanted to do?
First kind of came up with a high-level idea of what, how many hours it would take, how many hours of resources I would be taking, how long the training will take for others and myself, and also who all will be involved in doing so, what topics will be covered, and why, the reasoning for it. First, when to talk to my sponsor about it, my direct kind of report, she loved the idea, and after that she was like, yeah, go talk to A, B, and C and get their buy-offs. And I kind of followed up by having this mini presentation of, this is what I'm thinking. It would only be 30 minutes. Here's the deck. I'm planning to distribute it prior, and high-level topics, and why I think it's important, because we've had these issues that I think could be improved.
Okay. And so when you think about learnings from that project, right? What do you foresee yourself using in this next role? Like what's the most important thing you learned, or things you learned that you would definitely be using in this next role?
I think not only that project, but also just my whole experience working with different clients and teams at EY. I think what I learned the most was kind of like relationship building and people management, and having an open line of communication and trust with different people. That's something that I think throughout my career and my project made a huge difference. Because once I think you connect with somebody on like a more human level, and prove yourself that why, like the reasoning behind your goals and what you're trying to achieve, and also ensuring that they're aware that that you value their work as well. It makes working with them easier.
Okay, so first things first, I'm going to read the assessment that would have been read into the room if I was on this interview's loop, this candidate's loop. We'll start with that, and then we'll kind of circle back on some topics. So, insists on the highest standards. This was the best showing by the candidate. The example used was very tangible, with stakes eventually established, but had many moving parts and stakeholders. Further, it was clear from the outset that what the value would be to the organization at a high level, not with specific details. There's likely a better takeaway from this experience than the soft skill of relationship management, but overall, this was a good showing for the candidate. Now, there's a couple of pieces to take away from this. When I say it was a good showing by the candidate, we also have to consider level appropriateness, right? People come through interview at varying levels in their careers, and so what is a good answer for someone in the kind of mid to early career is very different for what is a good answer for someone who's an executive level type person. So it's very important to understand that. And in this specific instance, I would say that there was a level appropriate answer throughout the interview set of answers, but in this case, at least, it felt like a big enough project that they had managed and kind of took on a lot of responsibility on their own. So there's good ownership there as well, and built trust with other members of the organization by working across the organization to deliver on this project. Where the answer was falling down, and what kept it from being a great answer was that there really was no tangible stakes established by the candidate without consistent prodding, right? So if you're pushing to a solution and you're talking about talking about a story that you want to deliver in an interview, you want to make sure that you have enough command of the material that you're presenting it with confidence. It's clear you thought about it beforehand, that you're recalling from memory things you actually worked on, as opposed to pulling at kind of fragments of memory that maybe you had a part in, maybe you didn't. But I say this a lot, but you want to make sure you can always answer the question, how would you know you were being successful? And without having established those stakes or any kind of number, any kind of metric associated with what this candidate was working on, it's very hard to understand if they were being successful, or were they successful, or was the project going in the right direction. And so this is one of those things just to think about as you're pulling together your answers, especially when they are really focused on standards, diving deep. Insist on high standards, diving deep, right? Where data really, really matters. So it's just something to consider. I would say this was level appropriate for the candidate, given that they were targeting an Amazon parlance in L6. Microsoft, this should be like a 64, 63 level job, level candidate. So, later than early career, fresh out of B school, but, kind of a handful of years of experience, middle career, middle management type role. So that's it for this week. If you like this content, it would do me a huge solid if you go ahead and hit the like button, let the YouTube algorithm know. Though if I look at the view metrics, I think most people have dropped off by now, so I should probably put this content earlier in the video. So if you want to do me a real solid, you'll type something in the comments like, I stayed to the end, to make me feel good, and know that we do these every week. We try to help you learn from other people's successes and failures in mock interviews. Mock interviews are super important because, you know what? If you do it in a mock interview, you can learn a lesson. If you do it in a real interview, you lose a job opportunity. If you would like to get your own mock interview, go ahead and go to interviewatt.com and sign up. And the schedule tends to fill up. I apologize. Those who are really active and send me emails, sometimes we figure out how to make that work with my calendar. And I look forward to hearing from you.